The grass is always greener on the other side. It's kind of a thing, and I think that's an illusion. The grass is always fueled by manure. It has to grow with shit, and so which is true. I mean, yes, that's the reason that grass is green is because there's a lot of shit.
Welcome to Corporate Warrior, the podcast that brings you the best advice on how to improve your health, optimize performance, and maximize productivity. With your host, Lawrence Neal.
This episode is brought to you by ARX, the most innovative, efficient, and effective all-in-one exercise machines I've ever seen. I was really impressed with my ARX workout. The intensity and adaptive resistance was unlike anything I've ever experienced. I love how the machine enables you to increase the negative load to fatigue target muscles more quickly, and I love how the workouts are effortlessly quantified. The software tracks maximum force output, rate of work, total amount of work done, and more in front of you on screen, allowing you to compete with your previous performance to give you and your clients real-time motivation. The ARX uses a computer-controlled motor to give you the exact amount of resistance your clients need 100% of the time. This means that the resistance can never become dangerous, is intuitive and simple to use, and can provide you with all the results you and your clients are looking for in a fraction of the time. ARX is highly effective and efficient in delivering all of the benefits of exercise, including increased strength, muscle mass, cardiovascular conditioning, bone mineral density, and injury recovery. As well as being utilized by many high-intensity training trainers to deliver highly effective and efficient workouts to their clients, ARX comes highly recommended by world-class trainers and brands, including Bulletproof, Tony Robbins, and Ben Greenfield Fitness. To find out more about ARX and how you can get $1,000 off software licensing when you place an order, that's right guys, $1,000 off, please go to arxfit.com and mention Corporate Warrior in the How Did You Hear About Us field. So again, to get $1,000 off software licensing when you order, head on over to arxfit.com and enter Corporate Warrior in the How Did You Hear About Us field. This episode is brought to you by the Resistance Exercise Conference, the science and application of strength training for health and human performance. Would you like to learn from the top strength training researchers, network and connect with other exercise professionals from all over the world, join a welcome reception on a Friday night to build relationships with other strength training professionals, experience an early morning workout from an expert trainer to kickstart your Saturday, and get inspired, rejuvenated, and focused on your strength training business? I certainly do, and that is why I am attending and interviewing all of the speakers at the event. The Resistance Exercise Conference will be held on the 9th and 10th of March 2018 in Minneapolis, Minnesota at the Commons Hotel. The early bird registration fee is $149. To get 10% off this already generous price, head on over to resistanceexerciseconference.com. Click the registration button and enter Corporate Warrior 10 in the promo code field in PayPal. I'm very excited about this and I've wanted to attend for years. Sign up now at resistanceexerciseconference.com and get 10% off with promo code Corporate Warrior 10, and I look forward to meeting you in person. Hi guys, I am Lawrence Neal and welcome to another episode of Corporate Warrior, the podcast that teaches you how to optimize your high-intensity training protocol and your high-intensity training business to help you achieve your health, fitness, and business goals. My former guests include people like Dr. Sean Baker, Mark Sisson, Ryan Hall, Drew Bay, Keith Norris, and many, many more. My next guest is Mark Alexander, who joins me for a round two, but this time we are completely focused on business. Mark is a health and wellness entrepreneur based in Austin, Texas. He started his entrepreneurial journey in 2001 when he opened Efficient Exercise. Mark is also co-founder of PaleoFX, the world's largest paleo conference. And his current primary focus is on ARX, which stands for Adaptive Resistance Exercise. Mark serves as CEO and helps guide the growth of the company toward fulfilling its mission of advancing the human body through life-improving innovations. ARX is a powerful tool which Mark hopes will impact the way the world exercises forever. In this episode, Mark and I focus completely on business. We talk about the difference in strategy when starting a business versus growing a business, the biggest mistakes that Mark has made in his business career and what he has learned from them, how to incentivize your personal trainers to stick around, cancellation policies, and much, much more. As always, I dig into the real detail with Mark to try and figure out what makes him successful at starting and growing businesses in this sector over and over again. For all the show notes and links for this episode and all episodes, please go to corporatewarrior.org, and don't forget to hang around at the end of this episode for your free gift. And now I give you Mark Alexander on business. Mark, welcome back to Corporate Warrior. Appreciate having you back on the show again.
Yeah, this is going to be great. Thank you.
Cool. So I want to jump straight in terms. Obviously, this is a business focused episode, and I wanted to jump straight into strategy. One of the questions or sort of talking points that you emailed me was the difference between starting a business and having kind of like a lifestyle business versus growing and scaling a business. And you mentioned how this requires different approaches and strategies. And I'm really interested to hear you elaborate on that. I suppose you could elaborate on it in terms of a personal training business or other businesses that you've been involved in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, sure. Well, I mean, the starting a business happens no matter what type of business you're going to have to start. So, I mean, you have to start somewhere. And I think that, let's assume that maybe the first talking point could be, which pathway to go. I do, although there's a lot of derivatives to any type of business, I think in general, when you're starting out, you should make the decision. Do you want to have what I am calling a lifestyle business, which I would say is largely driven and dependent on you as the entrepreneur, maybe even a solo venture. You don't have a team, or you have a very small team, or do you want to have a growth and scaled business? In other words, one where you are largely dependent on a team. You are looking to scale this product or this service or what have you over and over again. And so I think those are two very distinct paths. And there's nothing inherently wrong or right with either path, but I think it's one that people, at least in let's just say the fitness business, I'm not sure they spend a lot of time thinking about that. I think they usually go into it and just kind of shoot and then aim kind of thing. So I think that's the decision that one should, in my opinion, think more about when starting into it. And I would say that most fitness business people that I run into probably lean towards the lifestyle camp. There's nothing wrong with that, but I guess we could speak a bit more towards that if that was helpful.
Yeah, please elaborate.
Okay, so I think that a lifestyle business in the fitness world tends to revolve around, the owner operator and the person that has kind of the name, the face, and the personality, if you will, of that business. So let's take a personal training business. Oftentimes, that person is an authority. That person has knowledge and background and experience, and that person then in a physical presence, a bricks and mortar business with resistance training equipment and exercise equipment will start that business and affect the community around them in a positive way with their health. And they might blog here and there. And again, largely just kind of have a business that hopefully is making money, is profitable for them, and promotes, or again, part kind of the reason that I'm calling it a lifestyle business. It helps their lifestyle. Maybe they are, they have a family, what have you. But it if done well, it should support that lifestyle. Whereas again, the other side of that equation is a growth and scale business where you really have to make, in my opinion, a lot of decisions that are saying no to things in the name of being able to repeat and scale and do that process over and over again. So, again, let's take an exercise facility, for example. I think that most trainers that I know are They're intelligent. Well, I shouldn't say most that I know. Yeah, most that I know. I don't want to say that most trainers are intelligent. Sorry, that's a bad statement. But the ones that I interact with, and the ones that I think your audience, are intelligent people, and they're also creative. I don't know that. This is kind of a whole other topic, but I'm not sure that many people look at personal training as a creative outlet. But I see so many creatives, or at least partial creative, right brain type of people in this world, and I think that they use this lifestyle business, if you will, as an outlet and kind of in their creativity. But that, what I have seen, can also get in the way if you're on the growth and scale side, because what happens is that you want to get creative with your programming. You want to get creative with your tools and equipment. You want to get creative with, all sorts of things in your business. And what happens ultimately on the growth and scale side is that you weren't simple enough. You didn't have a distinct enough mission and vision. You didn't have simple enough processes and operational procedures. So all of a sudden you try to grow and scale, and you're scattered. You don't really have, again, a simple enough business model or clear-cut mission and vision. Therefore, the growth and scale doesn't really happen. So again, and I've learned the hard way in this way, trying to create exercise studios around kind of the personalities, if you will, of the people and preferences of the people. And that can be a lesson in failure because either A, people leave, or B, you can get such a different experience going to different locations doing it that way that it doesn't, promote the overall, in my case, efficient exercise experience by kind of getting too creative, if you will, with the with some of the people and the processes and the tools and the like. So again, I still believe that a lot of trainers should just really hone in on their craft and hone in on what I'm calling the lifestyle business. Make their location it's best. Do it well and make the most of that particular business, because the growth and the scale, really what you're becoming is you're a businessman at that point. You're not really able to hone in and focus on your training craft, which a lot of people love to do. Now, I personally have grown out of that, if you will. This season that I'm in, I still can talk shop with trainers, but it's not as much, admittedly, as a passion of mine anymore. The passion is more, feeding into people that are working with me and growing this. So again, just two different approaches and two different pathways, if you will, for business. But I think recognizing, whether you've had a business for a while and you're trying to decide to grow and scale, or if you're just starting out, I think recognizing which pathway you want. And we're starting to see a lot of people that are disenfranchised with corporate world. Imagine that, right, Lawrence? And so they're trying to find, some outlet in health, wellness, fitness. And I think that, again, this lifestyle business model, if you will, is something that they should focus on, and kind of go with, and that will be much more fulfilling than many of these corporate jobs out there.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So it's almost like two different types of people. Maybe it's not that binary, but those that want a lifestyle business remain the trainer, and those that want to scale and grow their business become the businessman, and not the trainer anymore, because it's difficult to remain the trainer. And it's kind of the difference between working in the business and on the business. Is that fair? Would you say?
Yeah, no, that's definitely fair. Kind of the the get out of the way mentality, if you will. If you're in it too much, it is very difficult to really grow it. I would say past a certain point. It can be grown, and it can be. Again, I don't want to discourage anyone that this lifestyle business is a bad thing. Matter of fact, for a lot of personality types, it's probably the best thing, because that's really what they want to do. Is they want to be working with people. They want to be, again, continuing on in the personal trainer type of business. They want to do that. So there's nothing wrong with that. Just do it really well and continue to nurture that, and look for opportunities for growth. But that's just going to look a little different than the opportunities of, I want to open up 20 facilities and in the next 3 years, and that just looks very different.
And the second part of what you said was really interesting about saying no to a lot of things. Opportunities are vast in every discipline these days, and I find them very seductive in my own business. So it's hard, right? It's really hard to say no to a lot of things. But you hear that from, I think I listened to a podcast recently with Tim Ferriss where he said, you really have to have like a tunnel vision, narrow focus, and really focus on what's important and prioritize. Can you give us some examples of where you've seen that play out in your own business, where you've said no to a lot of things and focused on, what's the most important thing to reach your goals?
Yeah, and I'll say that I've learned that lesson over time. Definitely not perfect at this point. And again, I would say that that's more of the last, within the last 5 to 10 years for me, not even maybe the last 5 years. It's really, I would say, from my 20-ish year business career, being an entrepreneur, it's more in the last bit that I've discovered that more and more. And you're absolutely right. I think what people need is what I call an opportunity funnel. So just like you might have a sales funnel and who you want in your sales funnel, I think, as an entrepreneur, you also need an opportunity funnel. A lot of entrepreneurs are like a Labrador retriever. They see the yellow ball and they just go for it every time. So every opportunity, here's another yellow ball and I'm going to go chase it, even if they're going to chase it across the street and get hit by a car. So it's, it can be dangerous if you chase too many opportunities. And yeah, I guess some examples for me, what I discovered, gosh, there's a lot. What I've discovered is that people really matter. And it's not like that's a reach of discovery, but the people that I'm working with can greatly impact my overall well-being, my overall health, and ultimately the overall success of what I'm involved with. So, there's, and again, this is my personality type. I am slightly introverted. And so I have to be careful about how many people and what people are around me for what percentage of time. And, recognizing that, sometimes I just have too many people in my life, for lack of a better way to put it. And so, if I say yes to too many opportunities, that also equals too many people, if that makes sense.
It does.
And so I've learned the hard way there that, why am I run down? Why am I physically sick? And it's because I've realized that there's just too many people, around me, in seasons, if you will. And I cannot be all things to all people, and I can't, be energized enough, if you will, because I don't have enough downtime. I don't have enough alone time. And already being married with 2 kids, that sucks up quite a bit of your alone time. And so, when I go through seasons, kind of sprints, if you will, in business, I have to learn to be able to say no to things that are going to, in the long run or in the short run, really negatively impact me. And so, I've discovered that, like I said, if I say yes to too many opportunities, that does equate to, again, sometimes, depending on what the opportunities are, too many people. And I can't, I have to be selective about how many people I have at any given point or any given season, kind of in my business world. So I hope that makes sense. Yeah,
I just wondered because it's interesting what you were saying about, and correct me if hopefully I've interpreted this correctly, but a lot of personal trainers perhaps need to almost have like a cookie cutter type approach to their business where, this is what we do. This is how we do it. I mean, Luke Carlson does this so well in Discover Strength. It's like, these are the things we specialize in. This is what we focus on. Like, he told me, I don't know if it's changed since he spoke to him last, but, one of the earlier podcasts we did, he said, we don't do nutrition. We're a strength training company. We don't do that.
Yeah.
And I really respect that. And it enables him to really zone in on and scale what he has. Is that the same approach you've taken with like a fishing exercise? Yeah.
That's a saying no in a slightly different application than what I originally thought or we were discussing, but that's a great one for this audience, is saying no within your business in terms of, you're absolutely right. I'll take my efficient exercise business. We are exercise. We have tried various other things here and there, other offerings here and there. And it just, focus on what you do well and do that only. Again, you cannot be all things to all people. And I think there are many temptations for people, especially nowadays with all the cool gadgets and toys out there. There's opportunities to do so much. Yeah. And I think that you just have to really focus on what you do well. And, take resistance exercise, for example. What I've discovered over the years is that people will come into your facility for a workout. They might not necessarily just come in off the street for nutrition or for massage or body work or other things, again, that we've dabbled in over the years. So I believe what Luke is doing, for what I know, is very good up there. And I think that that is great to focus on, again, what you do well. And again, with many trainers, I think they need to stick to exercise. And I don't want to pick on kind of another segment of people, but I see chiropractors, for example. Sometimes I see them trying to do too much. It's like, what do you do well? You offer these 10 services. So what do you really do well? And so I think that if resistance exercise is your thing, high intensity training is your thing, do that, focus on it. And, the cookie cutter thing, I've gone from, over the years with efficient exercise, gone from what I would call much more of a cookie cutter approach, and then maybe ventured to kind of an A/B routine approach. And then we kind of went towards the other end of being able to do anything that's safe, effective, and efficient. And now we've kind of come back to, if any other trainers are going to train at your facility besides you need to, I guess I would say, go at least start towards the cookie cutter approach, at least start towards the basics, because, we kind of now have built out the matrix of, new trainer, new client. The options are pretty limited. Experienced trainer, new client, still limited, but yet had some growth into some other exercise options. And then, of course, advanced trainee, advanced client, trainer, and advanced client. Then the options do expand a bit more. So I think the answer is it depends. But if you're saying that do cookie cutter approaches or simplistic approaches help, absolutely, they really can.
So the other thing I'm focused on at the moment in my own business is this law of category, which obviously comes from the 22 immutable laws of marketing. At first in my podcast, I was focused on time, business, and health optimization, but I felt like that was too broad, and I was competing with other self-improvement and productivity podcasts like Tim Ferriss and James Altucher and people like that. And instead, I've tried to focus in on two categories, which is obviously high intensity training and high intensity training business. I'd just be very interested to hear about what you think about that as a business strategy, whether you feel that's important. And if so, where have you done that in your own businesses, sort of honed in on specific categories or created your own ones?
Yeah, I think knowing your audience is vital, because again, I think the general concept of you can't be all things to all people has come up already a couple of times in our conversation, which I think is a very true statement. And more people should spend time, thinking about that. Another helpful book that I've read is Blue Ocean Strategy. So again, the thought there is, most people are in highly competitive oceans or waters, if you will. And so you're trying to get out into a new ocean, or a blue ocean, as this book refers to it. So you're trying to swim in the waters of no competition. And so same general thought and same general objective there is to, minimize, mitigate, or eliminate competition by, doing things your way in your focused manner. And so, I applaud your efforts on the high intensity training and the high intensity training businesses. I think that that's a niche market, and I think that once you know who you're speaking to, and again, this has been a bit of a freeing podcast, or the second one that we're recording here, because I know those people pretty well. I am one of those people, and so I think it relates very well, and so yeah, I do think. I guess maybe on the other side of, can you get too focused? I think maybe, and I think I'll use my example. And I think in the last podcast, we alluded to this a little bit, but we didn't really wrap it in the context of business. We wrapped it in the context of training. But many years ago, I'm trying to remember what year in the late 90s, I think I got certified in super slow. And so I started off, being the only super slow certified person in the state of Texas, and the only super slow business in the state of Texas. And there was others. So, then the competition, if you want to call it that, even though they weren't in the same cities, but I couldn't hang my hat on that. But, as I started to grow, my business, I discovered that, hanging your hat completely on, in this case, it was super slow. Now, then they went through franchising and things where you couldn't use that unless you're a franchisee. So, that hand was kind of forced, but it was a forced hand that I greatly appreciated, because then what it made me do was more discover better ways to communicate high intensity training and the benefits and efficacy of high intensity training, and do it in a way that was not so stringent. And again, this isn't a training podcast. It's more of a business focused podcast, but I think a lot of your listeners will relate. I got away, and I think this is mission critical for one, being in Austin, which is a fairly progressive, but also laid back type of city. To come out and do something that was overly clinical, overly stark, like I kind of think the original super slow tenets was just a bit too much. Again, I know I referenced the Westcott study, YMCA study, that was done years ago, where yes, there were strength improvements, but the part of the study that I always like to look at is only 2 people or whatever it was continued with this program because they kind of thought it sucked. And so all of those thoughts were kind of running and percolating through my head. So it made me focus on high intensity training in a way that was more accessible to people. And so I think, yes, knowing that you're focused on high intensity training, that is great, but also realize that you could potentially be distancing yourself from people that you need. So if you look at like who you're trying to attract, and I'll just use my own examples. We're trying to attract people where time is literally money. So usually attorneys is a great example. And they live or work fairly close to the city center or the downtown area. And so in order to attract those type of people, we know what our exercise tenets are, but there might be some business decisions that you make that, for example, we made the space a bit more inviting than like, walking into a medical clinic. To me, that was too stark, and that was a turnoff, if you will, to people. So, so things like that, you still know your audience and your principles, but yet how do you attract the right people? Also, those people are used to kind of the 5-star experience, if you will, the high end resort hotel experience. So you can't have things in my opinion that they come in and it's a lot less or a big step down, if you will, for them to walk into your studio or your facility and, deal with some of these things that are, they haven't had to deal with in years. A dirty restroom, for example, or the change facility that just, isn't up to par or they want their water and they want things kind of served, if you will, to them. So, I hope that helped give a few examples of kind of how I've chosen to focus, and again, this is the efficient exercise business model, how we've chosen to focus on certain people and certain demographics. And we know in general that we're applying these high intensity training techniques, but yet, you almost in some ways, and I wouldn't say this to a lot of different audiences, but I think the high intensity training audience, for example, I think can be too laser focused, or maybe even has a tendency to be more focused than the average. And so I'm not saying bend on your principles, but know that, certain parts of maybe the messaging over the years has been too limiting. And so I think, we collectively should, in my opinion, work on some of the messaging and some of the applications so that more people can experience the benefits of high intensity training. It's not necessarily saying we're not focused on high intensity training. It's just saying, well, what have been the drawbacks, if you will, to high intensity training over the years? And part of it has been the intensity. And so, how do you get people in and kind of sucker them into working harder? And so we found various ways, and honestly, with our ARX and our software, we found ways to, let's just draw this particular goal out of a person, let them realize that they can load this much and they can exert and produce this much force, and eventually get to, the higher levels of intensity. So, again, that could get a little more training related, and I know we're not trying to go there, but how it wraps in the context of business is know your audience and focus on them, and then know maybe some of the, let's say, limitations of that audience or of that product, service, whatever you're trying to implement, and figure out how that bridge can be, can happen to that particular audience. And again, in the case of efficient exercises, how do we attract, high net worth individuals that don't have a lot of time into high intensity training programs? Well, we had to kind of bridge that a little bit. We had to be where they live or work, and we had to offer them, in my opinion, an effective exercise stimulus that was wrapped in a package that, looked and smelled and felt a bit like, a nicer, amenity type of studio, as opposed to, a medical clinic, for example.
Yeah. So just to kind of summarize, when you founded Efficient Exercise, was there any gym like that in Austin? Was there any gym that focused on that exact clientele and serving them in that way? So Efficient Exercise for high net worth individuals.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, that was February of 2001, and so at that time, yeah, exactly. So a lot of this won't be super applicable to the audience today, but the lessons learned there were yes, there was more of an advantage that I had at that time, in that there weren't as many facilities and there wasn't as much competition out there. So I understand that I had a bit of an advantage at that point. However, I mean, things quickly changed. I mean, Austin is a fitness-oriented community and city, and there are, the fact that we have a business, 17 years later or whatever, speaks volumes, because there are so many competitors out there now, and I think that. Again, I don't know the count, but so many businesses in gyms, fitness facilities, what have you, have failed, and I've seen it. And I think a lot of it does come back to, what were these standards? What were these areas of focus, and where can you, implement super high quality and super focused products and services? And so I do think that, that some of the success that we've had relates to that. And I also, I've always valued relationships. So if you're in the service business, you have to understand that people and relationships matter. And I would even go so far as to say that people and relationships matter more than what machines you have, what protocols you have, what your philosophies are. Quite frankly, a lot of people don't give a shit about that. What they care about is, do they trust you, and will they pay you for your product or service? So, especially in the training world, where you're seeing people come into your door, if you don't value them and you don't earn their trust, it probably doesn't even really matter how pretty your facility is, what cool equipment you have, all of that. It kind of doesn't even matter in the the service industry, if you will.
Yeah, no, well said. It's an important thing that perhaps a lot of, or some trainers forget how important that really is to sort of cultivate that. I've heard you say on a previous podcast, and obviously you've alluded to some of this already, that your focus is finding the top 2 or 3 things that you do really well, and that kind of are your strengths, and then outsourcing the rest as quickly as possible. I'd really love to hear you kind of elaborate on where you've done that in. I suppose ARX is probably the one you're most focused on at the moment, and kind of what you started on, like as soon as you scaled that business and started obviously bringing on more people, like what you got rid of and what you now focus on yourself.
Yeah. Well, I think in many businesses, when you start out, just be ready. Even if you are intentional about, what, I'm going to outsource X, Y, and Z, and I'm only going to do A, B, and C. It often comes down to, you're on your knees scrubbing the toilet. You end up doing things you didn't really expect to do, and you kind of, in my opinion, you kind of have to. I think there, was quite literal blood, sweat, and tears shed with building ARX. Between getting machines into small, tight places and literally, busting, bleeding and busting knuckles and whatever, in order to do it, and sometimes you just have to prove a point, or get to certain people. And so I think, in my case with ARX, I didn't know what it would be exactly. I obviously had high hopes. Otherwise I wouldn't have started it. But sometimes you just don't know, how quickly you can grow and scale. And so I think some of the obvious first things to outsource in that particular business was, I can't make these things myself. And even if I was a skilled welder and machinist and whatnot, at some point that's going to stop too. But that's not my skill set. But so the very obvious things of, we have this physical machine, we have to be able to build it. The other component of ARX was software. It's a vital component, so we had to develop software that communicated and displayed kind of what I'd envisioned to motivate people and the biofeedback mechanisms to get it done. And then, as I went out, I guess you'd say the initial stages of ARX, trying to get it into certain places and in front of certain people, and kind of get the user experience and the feedback loop going, and then what we needed to do to improve. For me, it's a blessing and a curse sometimes. I'm a business generalist, so I can do a lot of things in business, but I have to recognize where I'm stronger and where I'm weaker. And marketing is one of those areas where I would say of the macro business functions, I'm probably the weakest in marketing. I've kind of gotten by for years by just having a high quality service or product. And I think ARX still is, of course, I'm biased here, but I think it's a super high quality product. But it doesn't really matter if no one knows about it, right? And
right.
So I've had to surround myself and trust people that have the marketing chops and skills, to be able to help me get this product out there. Now, are there times where honestly I'm like, well, I don't exactly, I'm also a perfectionist. So it's difficult for me sometimes to sit on the sidelines. But I have to discover, what is it that, really affects me and negatively affects me. And, marketing, can be one of those things where, it just feels a little slimy sometimes, or it feels a little exaggerated, but hasn't advertising and marketing been that way for years? I have to remind myself that, and at least I'm not, I could think back to like cigarette ads and things like that, where at least I'm not marketing and selling something that doesn't work and isn't good for people, so at the end of the day, even if some marketing message with ARX is maybe not completely 100% congruent with exactly what I would want to say, there's a reason you trust people. And, if you're a perfectionist like me, you have to let some things go when you start into the empowering others and building a team. And hopefully none of my team is taking offense to this marketing talk that I'm having right now. But it's not, again, that I think, like I said, we're doing a poor job. It's just what I've learned as an entrepreneur, as a business person, is that is an area that I have to empower and equip others, because it's not a strength of mine. And so looking as you're building your team for complementary skill sets, I think is very important. I can also, be, again, I'm a business generalist, so I can do a lot of things, but, if you've ever found, usually a founder can be the COO or the operations oriented person. I just find that that's usually less common. And so I am a founder that, although I can be very type A and very systematic and operational, that's not where I get my fulfillment and reward. And so finding your right-hand man, if you will, or finding your operations person is probably one of the first and most mission critical parts of kind of growing and scaling a business. So I had to find Jason, in this case for ARX, to really get to kind of the next level, if you will, of growth and scale. I had a very qualified operations person prior to him, but he just couldn't allocate the time, energy, and resources, to really get us to where we needed. It wasn't a competency issue; it was a commitment/capacity issue. So, although that was terribly difficult to have, that season of change and transition, but man, if you can get that right operations person beside you as the founder, your world will change. And all of a sudden you look at problems much differently, because instead of saying, I've got to figure that out and I've got to do it, you can say, I'm going to figure out this part of that problem because that's where I'm stronger. And you're going to figure out that part, and then you're going to be the follow-up person to make sure that got followed up on and attended to. So yeah, I think that looking at those complementary skills, recognizing your strengths, and instead of spending all of your time, energy, and effort towards trying to improve your weaknesses, I think it's much better return on investment to hone in on your strengths and focus on those and implement your strengths within the business context, instead of, again, like I said, trying to beat yourself up about some of the weaknesses that you have.
You mentioned you're a business generalist. Could you elaborate on what are your strengths, and what do you spend most of your time doing on ARX?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think, one example that I have in my notes here to talk about, and I think this is applicable to recognizing your strengths and what are you good at. Not every founder is this way, but I hope, and my team can verify this. So it's hard to say this and then realize, well, maybe I'm not. Maybe I do suck at this. No, but I love to equip and empower others and let them also use their strengths. I mean, that's kind of a personal mission, vision. No matter what I'm doing, kind of a personal motto is empowering and equipping others to use their strengths. So I kind of, like with my kids, with anything that I'm doing, that's what I love to see. That probably gives me the most true reward in life, is to equip and empower others to let them use their strengths. So in the context of ARX, what I'm trying to constantly do is figure out, the dilemma of could versus should. So just because, so-and-so could do this, should they be doing that? Is that going to burn them out? Is that going to fulfill them? And again, it's not that you're what I'm always doing is I'm looking at the team, and I'm looking at skills and gifts. And then I'm also looking at the business functions. So there are just necessary functions of every business. They differ a little bit, but, admin, operations, finance, marketing, sales, like all those functions, no matter what business and how large it is, you've got all those functions. So it's always looking at the matrix of who we have and what functions we have and who's doing it well. And so I really like kind of, I guess it's a bit more like a coach, if you will. You're looking at your team and you're trying to get them in the right positions, and you're trying to, get the right plays, if you will, to draw on the coach analogy, so that they are going to excel. And so I'm not saying I'm perfect here, but I think creating that culture of everyone is on the team together, and everyone, instead of trying to beat each other, is trying to help each other and hold each other accountable so that we're all better. And I think, company culture is one of those things that the CEO or founder better be aware of, or else when shit hits the fan, your team is gone, or when things get really difficult, you're going to take it all because you haven't equipped or empowered others. So I think company culture is one of those things where we didn't even talk about it maybe 10 years ago. And so I think, me being a Generation X, kind of caught in the middle, if you will, between the large, Generation Y or millennial generation and kind of the baby boomer generation. I think if I could speak to fellow Gen Xers for a minute, I think we have a responsibility to cultivate the culture within our businesses, between the young and bright millennials that do look at the world differently, and then the seasoned baby boomers, if you will, and even older Gen Xs that have great perspective and wisdom. But sometimes the way that things have to get done these days, in my opinion, is very different. And a lot of that is because of, in my opinion, how the millennials respond to people and to company culture and to all these things that we've kind of been talking about. And I mean, we could continue to go down that route if you want, but I find it fascinating. I would say that easily one of the top 3 struggles I've had in the last 5 years is dealing with the millennial generation. And I say that just in a matter of fact way. It's not going away. Matter of fact, it's just growing. And so there was a bit of a disconnect, again, me being kind of in the middle in my 40s here, trying to connect with the 20-somethings and the 30-somethings, and then trying to figure out, I've got this wisdom from these older people, and I know that this is it, but that's not going to work or fly when I try to implement it, with this crowd here. So yeah, that topic is fascinating to me. And so I guess for your original question of what do I spend my time doing and what do I enjoy, or where am I gifted? I think, and again, there might be other strengths and maybe I should focus elsewhere, but I think I do a decent job of trying to understand people and get them in situations where they're going to be successful.
Going back to what you were saying about the challenges you've had with the millennials, obviously you don't necessarily have to answer this or give names or anything like that, but I'd be very curious. And I always find that examples illustrate what people are saying. Is there examples that you can give where you've had challenges and you've had to kind of adapt?
Yeah. I mean, as I'm sitting here, in ARX headquarters, our company corporate offices, I think that's a great example of, no, by no stretch of the means are we, Google or Apple or Facebook or some of these companies that invested billions of dollars into their company culture. And, there's chefs cooking for you and, comfortable seating everywhere you turn, and basically creating a culture where people don't want to leave the corporate headquarters because it's way better than home. But a little bit of that does go a long way. I mean, so here at our headquarters, of course, for sales purposes, we have ARX machines, but I mean, everyone has access to them. Everyone uses them, and there's a bit of a company culture of, we are all committed to our workouts and to exercise and to health, and there's accountability there. So I think that dynamic of creating a culture where we're all, kind of in this together, that's been a bit of an, for someone, and again, I'm not a complete introvert and I'm not a complete lone wolf or Lone Ranger, but I can go there. I can be a very much behind the scenes master architect, if you will, and not interact with people, maybe as much as I should. And so having the corporate headquarters has been a recent adaptation in the last year or so, where, we committed to, what, we have to feed into our team. We have to develop this company culture. As we grow, so does our team. And so, again, as all that we're doing, kind of being wrapped in health, because again, without health, we don't have anything. We're all committed to that. We're all in it together. We're all doing, infrared sauna. We're all doing our ARX workouts. We're all getting sun at the right times of the day. We're all, wearing our blue blockers and, things like that. So I guess that would be, the example that comes to mind of an adaptation to, I think I'm the only, oh gosh, I don't want to name names. I'm sorry. I'm just thinking out loud here, but I'm essentially the only Gen Xer on the team. And so I have a young team. And so and there's a couple people that are close to it. I don't know. It probably depends on who's defining millennials or not in terms of the cutoff. But all that to say is I'm outnumbered here, and I've got to figure out how to adapt and grow. I think adaptation and growth are two constants that are part of business, and I see it way too much. Don't want to pick on people, but it does seem to be the older you get, the more difficult it is to adapt and grow. And I've just seen company cultures, again, not to name names or name people, but people that I've seen or people that I'm closer to, where it's like, gosh, if you would just change this way you communicate, or this one, to me it seems small or what have you, but it's always easier looking from the outside, I understand. But it can be a cancer. You can start to have things internally in your business that are just so cancerous that if you aren't self-aware enough to recognize that, I'm not really sure what the answer is.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point, and certainly something I've seen in my corporate career. People like that who can really bring everyone down around them and really just really kind of damage the productivity of the business. No, that's so. Reading between the lines and what you were saying earlier, it was kind of like you were saying, and is this fair to say, like you had perhaps previously been less involved in cultivating a company culture that you just described, and you were more, like you say, behind the scenes, and now you've kind of realized, you know what, if we're going to go somewhere with this, we need to have a corporate headquarters, we need to be together, and we need to spend time together, and we need to have a kind of a more of a social congruency within the business. Is that no, you're absolutely right. I mean, you take my previous experience with efficient exercise and what effectively we created there, and again, it since has changed within the within the EE's ecosystem as well. But what we effectively created was we have numerous facilities, and we have facility managers and trainers under and around those facility managers, and everybody, although we had the same sign outside, was kind of on their own in terms of they were on their own island, if you will, because they're not physically connected to the other facilities. And especially was noticeable when we expanded outside of the city limits into other cities and other markets. All of a sudden we realized, wow, what I discovered is this is terribly difficult. It's possible, but it is terribly difficult. And so again, when this kind of coincided along with my decision to, again, going back to my personal motto, if you will, of equipping and empowering others to use their strengths, I decided to really focus in on the tools to implement a high-intensity training business, or to implement an exercise business, i.e., I went on to develop ARX. And so that was, you're right. It was something that I hadn't really paid attention to all that much. Even the way that we worked and orchestrated our trainers' schedules was block schedules to where, people were at different times. And so you might have a guy at the evening or a girl in the morning. And, so again, there was togetherness, but there wasn't. And so in starting ARX, I quickly realized, this togetherness thing, it has to happen. And there are many benefits to it. I think this kind of community and accountability, does really help. I think that, if there's a part of it that I do still struggle with, again, just being honest here,
is kind of the collaborative work environment. I think, and I'm not sure that this will ever change. So again, I have to adapt to and make strategies around this, but I think best on my own. If I'm trying to solve a problem, if I have 10 people around me shouting ideas, like, that's probably not the best environment for me. But yet what I've also discovered is that collaborative input, it'll make me think about things a little differently. And B, it's super valuable to the people that are giving the input. And so, it's usually, I'll go into a meeting, for example, more recently, we were talking about some refinements, to a machine, and actually we're talking about, can't really disclose too much, but another device, that we're talking about making. And so,
cool.
When I went into the meeting, did a lot change from what I already had in my head and on paper and in my notes to the end of it? Probably not. But did the people in the room feel like that they were able to collaborate and give input? Absolutely. And so I think that's crucial. And there were little tweaks, honestly. I mean, to give everyone credit here, it did not end up like what I had exactly. There was tweaks to it because of the considerations that I had never thought of, or just didn't maybe include quite as much from our product manager's perspective of what happens on the manufacturing floor, and here's what we could do or here's what we can't do. So yeah, I think things like that. So I hope those are again good examples, helpful examples for people to take in.
No, they are. So you've talked about in the past on previous shows 80-20, and obviously Pareto law is a very important principle in business to really kind of increase productivity, sort of exponentially. And it's certainly something that I've applied in mine. So I'm really keen to hear if you can think of any examples in your businesses where you've applied 80-20 really successfully. And is that a principle that you use quite a lot?
A principle I use all the time. Okay. And as it relates to ARX and the product business, kind of the idea of a minimally viable product. So, the whole, launching of a product, I don't, again, I'm not nearly as seasoned as some people in terms of product launches, but I think I have enough experience to speak to the fact that you're never really ready. I compare it to having your first child. Like, you're not ever really ready. So, you might have the nursery ready or whatnot, but you're not really ready. I think it's the same thing with launching the product. Like, you're never really 100% ready. And if you are, you're too late. You just spent too much time on perfection.
Yeah.
And you didn't, again, as we were talking just a minute ago about user influence and input and kind of this collaborative idea. So, ARX is a great example of that. We kind of put the first, machines out to play in 2011, 2012. Very different than what we have today. Very different. And a lot of that, there's numerous reasons for it, but a lot of that is because, we thought we were 80-20. I don't even think we were even 80, but let's just say we were 80-20. That was the thought at the time. You have to discover things as you go. And sometimes you have to break things, or fail, in order to fix things. So I think ARX is a great example of 80-20. We're launching a product. We put it out there, and sometimes shit breaks. Sometimes things don't go as you expected. Sometimes, you get praise along with just horribly offensive feedback. And so you just have to take it. You can't take things too personally. I think that's the part of I think our culture these days is very hung up. I think prior to recording this podcast, we were talking a little bit about social media and statistics, and we have a likes type of culture, like how many likes did we get, and that's the same thing with 80-20. So if you put something out there, you're going to get some feedback or some dislikes or whatnot. But they sting. They hurt a little bit, and you kind of know it. but you still had to go there and do it or try it and get that feedback. And so I think, if I could be an encouragement to people, is you're going to go out there, if you apply this 80-20 thing, which again, I do think is the right approach. Just know that, like, don't let hopefully it's less than 20% of the people and the squeaky wheels get all the attention. There will be people that will bitch and complain and will be the loudest about it. But hopefully they're being loud about something that, yes, needs attention, but it is something that you're working on and something that you've kind of known already. And so, yeah, I think that just be aware of the downside of the 80-20 thing is, again, you're putting out a minimally viable product or service. You're going to get feedback, and some of it is not going to be pleasant. And so, just be ready for that. And it's hard. It's hard, especially as an entrepreneur or founder, because a lot of that stuff, people, I think in general, I try to see the good in people, but I do think most people don't understand what it really takes, and kind of how much time, energy, effort, money something has really taken. And so when you get that feedback, it can be quite offensive, and hurting, but, take it, for what it is, and try to ignore all the emotional side of it. Because again, with ARX, for example, I'm aware that people are staking their businesses on our technology. So I want just as much as them for them to be successful. And so I don't like it when, there's a customer service issue and we're trying to figure it out. Like, that's hard, because you're that these people depend on your tool, your technology to make a living. So, so I don't know where I got with that.
No,
taking it from 80-20, but yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, so I was just going to clarify. So if I got this right, so in a way you're saying, in order to ship, right, in order to ship the product and get the MVP out there, you basically had to get it to a point where it would deliver 80% of the results for clients based on 20% of what maybe the finished product would look like. That's probably not a complete way of saying it, but you got 20% of it. You got the 20% right, or you at least tried to, which would deliver 80% of the benefits for clients' outcomes. Is that fair?
Yeah. I mean, yes.
Maybe it's not quite that bad. Maybe you got like 40%.
Yeah, no, I mean, I guess the other part of what I was trying to say is that, again, in the specific example of ARX, for me personally, that 80-20 and what it encompassed in 2011 versus today is very, very different. And so but you don't know until you do it, until you ship, as you said. And so, so I think that's just all part of the process, right? It is a process. It is a marathon, not a sprint, or as I like to look at it, sometimes a series of sprints that ultimately you cover the 26 miles. So you have to, start somewhere, right? And it depends on what your product is or what your service is. That starting point looks very different. But nonetheless, I think I was also mentioning adapting and growing. Like, that's the whole part of the business climate now. I just don't think many businesses are going to start, in this century where there is not going to be some type of adapting, changing, and growing as a continual part of the business. I think it shows, in my opinion, from let's take the baby boomers or let's just take the baby boomer generation, for example. Many of them do not know what it's like to change jobs very much, if at all. And there aren't many people, in my opinion, they're going to come out of school or not go to school or whatever and just stay with a company forever. Like, that just doesn't happen anymore. And I think part of that is because businesses are forced to adapt, change, and grow, or else they're going to die. And I just think that's more and more now what we all need to be thinking about. And maybe it's small tweaks. Hopefully it's small tweaks. It's not, completely shifting and turning a business on its head every, 2 or 3 years. But I do think these tweaks have to occur, these adaptations, or else again, you're ultimately going to, sink the ship.
Yeah, no, that's good stuff. No, I agree. It's a very much a changing landscape. And also, I think from for the millennials, it's like there's so much more opportunity, and that's another kind of motivation to often change jobs. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. I mean, the grass is always greener on the other side. It's kind of a thing, and I think that's an illusion. However, I mean, what did someone tell me once? The grass is always fueled by manure. It has to grow with shit. And so, which is true. I mean, yes, that the reason that grass is green is because there's a lot of shit. But anyway.
I have one for that. It's the grass the grass is greenest where it's being watered.
Yeah, there we go. Okay, yeah.
That's the PG version.
Yeah. Sorry, and I should have clarified with you. I don't think I dropped too many curse words last time.
No. It's a curse word friendly podcast, so it's all good.
And so, but yeah, you're right. It is, and so, take dating or take job shifting or whatever. There are many times that people can put on the good faith and make something look good, and it's not really until in business, I would say the low end is 90 days of working with someone. I would suggest that in many cases it's up to maybe 12 months maybe to really kind of start to understand. You're going through kind of a full business cycle or fiscal year before you really start understanding how people respond to stress, how people respond to new projects, new ideas. And so, yeah, I think that, there's, if we're taking the millennial generation, I think that, as an entrepreneur, you have to be aware of kind of that instant, or maybe it's not instant, but it's very early on. I think the beauty of what millennials do is that they get a sense for this business environment, this company culture, all these things that we were talking about earlier, and they decide fairly early on, am I in or am I out? Now, again, as a business owner or as a founder entrepreneur, training new people and having the attrition of staff is always difficult. To me, it's so much easier to tweak little knobs with staff and try to keep them around versus trying to completely retrain them and get new ones. And I think that, paying attention to the company culture, as we were talking about earlier, at least helps with that. It will never not be a problem in business, having people quit on you or the attrition of staff. But I think there are strategies to do it better and to keep people around.
I want to ask you some questions about that a little bit more. Some questions that were actually submitted from kind of a personal training studio perspective. Yeah. How is it that you incentivize personal trainers in your business to get them to stick around?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's different. I guess that's an it depends question. However, I think there's usually a combination of financial incentives, although that's only a part of the equation. I don't care how much someone says I'm driven by money or not says it. They still have a little bit of that, but I wouldn't, again, it's never 100%. And then I think also especially again, I think this is a growing portion of it with the millennial generation in particular, is this contribution, I guess is the best word to say. If they feel like they've been able to contribute to the greater good, to the company's greater good, that contribution can go a long way. And then I also just think encouragement and growth. So even if someone is with you, and personal trainers, for example, I would say for most personal trainers, they're in it for a season of their life. It's a great job. I don't think you're going to see many lifers being personal trainers, for 30, 40 years. I mean, it happens. I'm not saying it doesn't. It just, to me, I've seen it be more of a seasonal thing in life. And so even if it's, a stepping stone and, these people will be gone in, 3, 4, 5 years, I think just being okay with and embracing this incentive to grow them and maybe, with some of our trainers, they've wanted to take to, maybe some Facebook activity or social media stuff and promotions and marketing. Some of our trainers have said, I want to help refine the exercise video library for our train the trainer material. So it's kind of finding what contributions they want to make that aren't training. Now, again, we start everyone pretty much exclusively doing training only. They don't really have the opportunity. It's kind of that weeding out period. If they're going to go, we don't want to invest too much, or we don't want them to have their hands in too much of their business responsibility, because then that's hard for us and painful for us. So if they make that 6 or 12 month period, then we usually can, and sometimes you can accelerate that, but usually after 6 or 12 months, we know. So then again, part of that incentive is, giving them more, a slight pay increase in terms of the percentage of their training sessions, their commission schedule, but also finding ways that they can contribute to the business that are, again, non-training related, if that makes sense.
Yeah. How many efficient exercise gyms do you have now?
Right now, I mean, as of last year, again, I think I previously mentioned, selling to Skylar, selling our San Antonio locations. And so we, my focus has been ARX. And so right now we have two operating in Austin. We have one at Home downtown Austin, which is kind of downtown center. A lot of people live and work there. There's many high-rise buildings and more going up every day. And then we are in Rosedale, which is, I guess a slightly urban, but still a neighborhood, more of a neighborhood north of downtown. So we are currently operating 2 efficient exercise locations.
How many staff across both locations?
Great question. We're in the neighborhood of 10 staff.
Okay, so 5 per location. But
and yeah, that's roughly it. Like I said, because we usually have managers, we have full-time people, we have part-time people, and then we have some business admin and support management people as well. So.
Yeah. This is a very, very specific question. In terms of cancellation policies, so let's say, I don't know, if you have a 24-hour cancellation policy, how do you make that efficient for your business? Like, how do you deal with things like cancellation policies? How do you manage those within efficient exercise?
Well, I guess to answer that question, I'm going to back up just a little bit to say, in part, this was the reason we changed our policy. So, January of 2016, after, again, 15 years of doing it one way, we changed. And what we changed was we converted everyone over to monthly packages. I know it sounds like a sin in terms of, that sounds like a gym. That doesn't sound like a training studio. But what we did is we greatly stabilized the financial financial stability of the business. So by doing that, people were at once or twice a week, and they were in private sessions, or they were in small group or partner sessions, and then that's what they pay for. And surprise, surprise, when people are paying for something, they come to it. And so for 15 years, I was very much adamant that you have the flexibility and you pay for what you get. Now, again, this is one of those, again, the criticisms are going to come. Did I personally get some heat for that from clients that have been with me forever? Absolutely. It was a difficult and painful decision, but we did it. So I guess if you are working on for lack of a better word, a punch card system, it doesn't have to be a physical, but a metaphorical punch card where people paid for 10 sessions and then they come, but they can cancel within 24 hours. If you're working on that system, I think that that enforcing and making sure you communicate these expectations right from the beginning is super helpful. I will say that since we've gone away from that punch card type of system and gone to these monthly packages, it's been so much more freeing. I think that most trainers they want to focus on training and not all the administrative headaches, and so I think that's been a freeing strategy and policy since we've implemented that. The trainers, although they still have to do some of that, clients are going to reschedule and whatnot, but at least they don't have to focus on kind of being the ass, if you will, and having to make sure that people know and that hey, you didn't cancel on time, I got to charge you for that. So anyway. I hope that's helpful, but I will say, us shifting over to a monthly package of once or twice a week sessions has been huge for us. And then again, that's almost, we're completing our second year of that. And I think that's been a great implementation and change for us.
So is that, I think you kind of hinted at it just there, but has that correlated with greater compliance with clients?
Yes.
That's great, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And so, we noticed, and I still think so. Again, I'll just speak for Efficient Exercise and being here in Austin, and it could be different in other places, but I think no matter where you are, there's going to be seasonal and cyclical changes and dips and increases in your business. So with where we are and who we serve, kind of January through May is kind of high time. Most people are kind of committed and they're back or they're starting new, starting fresh. And so those are good months for us. And then the summer will often dip a little bit with travel and people not being as consistent. And then kind of the other high time is kind of September, October, where people, okay, I'm back again. and so,
that does.
And then of course, towards the end of the year and the holidays and people, screw off again and they're not as consistent. So that those changes and those ups and downs are still there. They've just leveled out quite a bit. Definitely leveled out financially, and they've leveled out from attendance as well. So, the only negative impact I would say from us implementing that is there might be some people, like if they holiday or they travel over the summer for 2 or 3 weeks, they might just take off a month. But at the end of the day, that doesn't really matter. I'd rather them take off that full month. And they can still come in when they're in town and pay for that single session. But that seems to have helped us so much is to give people that option. And yes, there's still ups and downs in the business, but that has definitely stabilized the attendance.
Cool. I want to talk to you a little bit about your mindset, Mark, and goals and things like that. You're a real sort of serial entrepreneur. Why have you started so many companies, and what drives you to do that?
Yeah, I mean, I think, there's this, again, in my notes here, I kind of wrote down, and again, they look like a madman's note sometimes, but I did write down kind of this concept of happiness versus joy. And I think that I chase the latter. So I chase joy and fulfillment because happiness to me is fleeting. And of course, I'm sure that people, can argue that and, whatever.
No, I totally agree with that.
You choose happiness, whatever, but I think happiness is circumstantial and joy and fulfillment is much more long-term, if you will. And so what I've discovered is that, again, kind of that equipping and empowering others and seeing them thrive, seeing them use their strengths and their gifts, that's super fulfilling to me. And could I do it in other ways? I suppose, but business has been an opportunity for me to be able to do that. And see that happen. Have I made many mistakes as being a serial entrepreneur, of course, and I still make them all the time, at least twice a day, I think. But I think that there's that drive there of that's kind of my measure for success is like what is yes, there's financial measures. I'm not going to ignore that. I love data, and I love finances, and I love relational finance, if that makes sense. I mean, not that I'm an investment banker or anything like that, but I love those ideas of how you can cultivate relationships and financially kind of improve other people and other businesses. But that's kind of another topic. But I think the idea and then the fulfillment, if you will, of seeing people use their gifts and being empowered and equipped, it really drives me. I have discovered that health at this point in time is kind of the common thread, if you will, of everything that I am involved with. I think that health is so integral to our lives, and there's been personal things too with certain family members or people close to me where again, some of these decisions they made affected their health, and quality of life just goes to shit, and then it just goes down. And so I don't like that. I understand that life deals bad hands sometimes, and there's things that we can't avoid, but I think consciously and intentionally being involved with health has also been a driver for me. So if there's something out there that's an opportunity that has this ability to improve the greater good and the health of people, then it's attractive to me. Now, again, with my opportunity funnel, I might say no to it, but at least that's been the driver thus far. Is essentially overlapped in the context of health, and is it going to give me an opportunity to empower and equip others?
Cool. Do you find that's like this sense of responsibility is like added motivation to like optimize your own health? Do you find that like if you don't kind of walk the walk, that people will judge you?
It's interesting you say that. Yeah, I mean, I think we're in a I would say rightly so. We're in business where people will pass those judgments. Now, again, I've seen people that I would call healthy that aren't as fit looking as maybe they could or should be. And again, you just never know what's going on with someone. I mean, sometimes it's true medical things that they're battling. Sometimes it's, depression. Sometimes it's divorce. You just never know what's going on. So, but all that to say is, yeah, I mean, there is a compellingness, being involved in health businesses to be healthy. That's for sure. I think that, where I probably honestly feel more pressure, is the financial health of others. It's just part of being, in the position that I'm in, but, I want others to be financially healthy as well. And that gives me more pressure, honestly. It's both the ultimate reward and satisfaction, if you will, of seeing others and they're using their strengths and they're empowered and equipped and they're making money from what they're doing. But it's also the pressure of, we have to let this person go, or, we can't pay this person as much as they think they are worth because it's impossible or whatever, so, but I know that wasn't where your question was going, but it did definitely make me think of financial health along with kind of, I guess, overall health.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point you raised. So you care a lot about the financial success of your staff and the people around you, and then obviously the financial burden that people have too. Correct. Yeah. And kind of what, I've definitely gone through years where my accountant has, scratched his head as to how I've even made it. Because you go through seasons as an entrepreneur of ups and downs and, make some, lose some, win some, lose some, whatever. And so, it's one of those that I feel a responsibility to take those risks, maybe more so than what I think others feel.
And I think a lot of entrepreneurs go through that, and they take it on themselves. And so, yeah, I do feel that responsibility, to take on those risks. And in a perfect world, which obviously it's not, I hope that others don't have to take on nearly the same type of risk that I do, because, I feel this drive, this calling, this responsibility to take on those risks. And I'm not sure everyone's built for that or made for that. Hell, I don't know if I am sometimes, but I don't, I do have this, sense of responsibility to people working with me, that I want to take on and burden as much of the risk as possible, so that then they can, again, do what they do best.
That's cool. Just going back to what you were saying about, looking after your own health as your kind of, an example, especially in your industry. And people might think, because I feel like that, right? Being this podcast host of this podcast, if I was not in good shape, that would be bad form. And some people might think, oh, that's silly. You should want to be healthy for yourself. And I do, but there's nothing wrong with a little bit of extra motivation from a bit of social pressure. I think that's I think one should like reserve judgment and think, actually, that's quite useful. It almost makes me want to say to people, you should start a blog or fill in the blank about health and fitness because you're interested in it. And that will actually, that kind of public announcement, that accountability will probably motivate you more than anything.
Absolutely. I mean, we have an internal bet, if you will, going on right now. Jim Keane, I don't mind calling him out here.
But
he was actually over in the UK. He was actually in Ireland, and he, admittedly put on a little bit of extra weight while he was in Ireland. Too many Guinness. And,
Guinness.
So, yeah. Anyway, when he came back to the States, he again, this is kind of that community and culture that we have here. He put it out to several of us that, you know what, I need some accountability. I need to put it out there. I need to, get back to this fighting weight, if you will. And so, we have this internal bet. If he doesn't make a certain weight, he has to shave his mustache, which would be a completely devastating thing to him. But he also has an incentive that if he gets to a certain weight, then we get him infrared sauna it's kind of a personal infrared sauna for his house. So anyway, I think you're right. The motivation can come from something distasteful or decentive and incentive. And you're right. There's that accountability. If you put something out there, you better kind of you will more likely kind of follow through with it, if you will.
Yeah. You mentioned, I guess, the kind of values that drive you to build more companies, and, empowering others being a key one, and spreading this good message of health. What are your, are you a goal oriented person? Do you set specific goals? How do you set goals if you do, and what are they?
That's a good question. Yeah. I mean, every year, I kind of do, I guess back that up. I mean, I do daily goals. I do weekly goals. I do quarterly goals. I do annual review and goals. So yes, that sounds a little OCD when I say it out loud. But yes, I do all of that. And most of the time what it is kind of setting a flag, 12 months down the road, and kind of knowing generally that I hope to get to that milestone, in business, personal, several different areas, and kind of have a driving theme of kind of the year, if you will. And then that theme kind of dictates how I'm going to plan for, the quarter, and then plan for kind of week over week to then get to those usually kind of 3 quarterly goals. I think in threes a lot of times, and so I don't try to overwhelm myself with goals and objectives, whether it be for the day or for the week or for the quarter. But if you don't put them out there, then what are you really, going after? Are you really going to chase something? And unfortunately, I think the answer is no, you're not going to chase much. So, and do I routinely fail? Yes. I think I probably fail more than I think. I shouldn't say that. But I fail quite a bit in getting to a goal because I think you should stretch yourself enough. And that's okay. You know, like I said, failure doesn't mean that you didn't make it part way. And then, you know, it does feel good, at least especially on, say, like the daily ones, to know that like pretty routinely you're checking off your daily ones. And then if you visit your weekly ones, you know, maybe you're hitting 2 out of 3. And you have to carry something on. And quarterly ones, maybe you hit 1 or 2 out of 3. So yeah, it works for me. It's just kind of a system that I use. And, I hope that's a helpful answer. That's kind of how.
I'm guessing the daily goals are more like actions you got to do that day, and perhaps the same for weekly, and then maybe the monthly and quarterly are like actual like outcomes, because you can't expect it's hard to plan for outcomes on the day. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. I mean, I shouldn't say that's absolutely right. That is mostly right. I think that there are some times where, you know, a specific example might be a meeting with, you know, several people that I will put the outcome that I want from it at the beginning of the day. And so when I go into that meeting, I am intentional and hopeful that outcome happens. Now, it usually has some derivatives and some spin-offs of what that actually might be, but I think some outcomes can happen faster, if you want to call it that, and some can't. You're right. Some are more, you know, milestone based. Like, so a lot of you're absolutely right in that the daily a lot of times would be just steps to get towards the weekly. So a weekly thing could be something that cannot be, you know, it's not a one email kind of thing. It's something that I'm working towards that week. And it might be, you know, 2 phone calls and 5 emails and whatever, you know, so you're right. So the daily might be more of the action steps that I need to take to then accomplish that goal, to move that project or that, you know, relationship or whatever forward. So, yeah.
Cool. There's a can you elaborate on what your goals are for the current quarter? I don't know how private they are for you. If not, don't worry.
Yeah, well, it's funny you say that. As we just started the last quarter, I'm kind of like a couple of days behind of where I wanted to be, because I've got some travel coming up, and so this week is actually kind of the week I'm going to be visiting with the team about the quarterly rocks, as we call them, and Scaling Up is a book I should throw out there too, that kind of outlines some of these strategies. Now, it's not like, again, I use just one source and one source only. I'm usually like I kind of take the general philosophy that pretty much every book or every person has something good and of value to offer. Some people less than others, but anyway, and so that Scaling Up book, like I said, has a lot of what we do internally. So that's probably a specific, goal or outcome and strategy that I could introduce there.
So, sorry,
go ahead.
Sorry, Mark, go on.
Oh, I was just going to say, so the specific examples of that might be, for me personally, so corporate sales, which we define as kind of larger accounts or people who have numerous locations, is part of my relationships and my responsibilities. So, so I have in Q4 a couple of corporate accounts that I want to see come through with a certain amount of orders and units. So that's a specific example in ARX of a quarterly goal or quarterly rock for me is, the corporate accounts and what I want to see from them. So I can't, again, that's not a one phone call kind of thing. That's going to take some time to make sure that, that I develop and talk to about their growth and how they're going, and what we can do to look at the next quarter and the next stage of their growth and how we fuel that, if you will, with the ARX machines. So.
Yeah, Cool. Okay. Running out of time, but there's just a couple questions I wanted to ask you, which I'm really keen to ask, and one you highlighted. What does the first 90 minutes of your day look like? A typical day.
Yeah. I mean, so my kind of morning routine is generally the same. And I have a bit of a shortened, condensed one when I'm traveling because I usually it just gets shot a little bit more. But in general, it's a quiet, introspective time. Just as much distraction free as I can. Again, I'm married with 2 kids, although the kids are teenagers now, so they're a little much more self-sufficient than they used to be. But I'm waking up. I'm again praying, meditating right off the bat. I then do some reading and some planning, and again trying to get, as I mentioned, my daily goals. What I go through is a brief exercise. Again, doesn't take too long, but it's kind of a revisit of the day before, what went well, a revisit of the day before of what made me uncomfortable, or what I kind of didn't like about the day before, and then that kind of helps me with the planning of that day. And then all of this, along with coffee, of course. I'm not a breakfast person. I generally fast in the front end of every day. Not all the time, but again, it's just what works for me. And so, I do usually also do coffee in the morning as I'm doing all of this, and then a couple of very brief. I know some people spend hours and hours with mobility and foam rolling and whatnot. I just have to do a couple of decompression things, foam rolling and hanging, and I'm kind of done there. I'm not a morning workout person. I never have been. And so that's not part of my morning routine. Now, if I'm traveling, and sometimes, variations of getting outside and either walking or just doing some of this activity in the morning sun is also part of it. So, then then it depends on which day it is, but I'm either then going to the office or continuing some of those processes of actions at home. Again, it kind of depends on which day it is. And so that's about, like I said, on the short end, 20 or 30 minutes, and on the long end, like 45 or 50 minutes. So it's not, I don't spend, a ton of time on this routine, but I try to be as efficient with it as possible. But I find that on the days that for whatever weird reasons I can't get some of that done, I don't have the same type of days.
You mentioned praying. Are you a religious man?
I always say that religion is to me a set of rules. And so, no, I'm not a religious guy. But do I believe in the supernatural? Yes, I do. I think it's kind of like, can everything be explained by science? I think a lot can, but I think there's some things that either whether you call it, we're still discovering, or there's kind of a power greater than us. I think people will differ on that opinion, but I guess I fall into the camp that there are some things that I don't think we can explain. I think there's some level of supernatural activity going on, and I don't claim to know what all it is either, but I think there is something out there. So if that makes sense.
Yeah. Cool. No, that's interesting. I do a similar thing in the morning. I do I alternate between the 5-minute journal and the stream of consciousness journaling, just where you write down whatever's on your mind. I find them both very therapeutic, and I always have a more productive day if I do that. And today, as you know, I didn't. I started dodging social media bullets straight away, which is the worst thing ever.
No, it is. Well, and as I mentioned earlier, and it's probably worthwhile mentioning too, is I'm currently on a social media fast.
Yeah.
So, I have to go through seasons of just not being on social media because I find that it's distracting, disheartening, whatever. But unfortunately, I think that many times it takes us away from productivity more than it helps our productivity.
Completely, yes, it does. It's very seductive. Okay, so final question for you. What is one of your favorite personal failures, specifically a failure that led in some way to success further down the road for you?
Oh, wow. That's a good question. Where to start?
Oh, really?
That's something. I think what comes to mind is, I guess, maybe a failure or small series of failures around, growing efficient exercise in terms of numbers of locations. I think I alluded to it earlier, how we discovered as we went outside of the city of Austin, like, wow, this is really difficult. This is painful. And so I think what happened in the result of those failures, i.e. either me selling or me closing some businesses, some locations, it was kind of combinations of both. It made me realize that I need to focus on ARX more. And there's nothing wrong with a training business. It's just, for me personally, I realized that, I'm going to be more effective if I focus on developing the tool, i.e. ARX, for these training businesses, as opposed to trying to do it myself. So I that doesn't sound very well. I thought that I could, in effect, go out and do both on my own. I could have this tool and I could have the facilities, and I can do both. And then I just discovered, I need to focus on one of them, not both of them. And so I guess we definitely aim to, I mentioned the financial stability of efficient exercise, of the pricing and packaging and the monthly options. It forced us to do that. And really we had again, I think in threes, we had the stabilize, standardize, and optimize initiative through efficient exercise after that. Where again, there's a lot of objectives and goals underneath each one of those: stabilize, standardize, and optimize, kind of macro themes, if you will. But it made me, we had to revisit that, and we went through it with efficient exercise, and then really the management and the staff have gone through those stabilize, standardize, and optimize, and I have then been freed up because I kind of gave initiative and flag setting for what was going to be minimally 12 months, but it ended up being more like 24 months. So that was great. And then that freed me up from, kind of the daily minutia of efficient exercise. And it gave me quite a bit of free time, or focus time, if you will, on ARX. So, I just had to spend that time of recognizing what efficient exercise needed, through the lens of stabilize, standardize, and optimize. And then I kind of gave those initiatives, and I still check in, but I'm not as focused there now. Now I'm able to focus on the ARX business. Cool.
Good stuff. And what's the best way for people to contact you, find out more about what you're up to these days, Mark?
Yeah. So we've mentioned both ARX and efficient exercise. And so I think that, if you want to find out more about our exercise technology, go to arxfit.com, or our ARXFit Facebook page. There's other forms of social media too, but they don't allow me on those. And then and then for efficient exercise, we're based here in Austin. So efficientexercise.com. And again, we have the training facilities here in Austin. So those are probably the primary two outlets to look for me and look for us.
Awesome. Good stuff. Well, this has been really interesting. It's really interesting to get more of a kind of business background from you and get an opportunity to ask all these questions. It's been really fun. And for all the listeners to find the resources, show notes, everything that Mark and I mentioned in this episode, please go to corporatewarrior.org, and you'll also find on there every other episode I've done as well. So it's about 80, well, probably when this is published, 85, 86 episodes, and you can kind of pick kind of a la carte, whatever you're interested in. And yeah, thank you guys very much for listening. I hope you enjoyed that. Before you head off, head on over to corpwarrior.com to get your free ebook with 6 interview transcripts of some of my top guests, including Dr. Doug McGuff, Drew Bay, and Bill Day Simone, on how to optimize muscle gain, fat loss, and overall health in an efficient, effective, and sustainable way. These transcripts are not verbatim, deliberately. Instead, they've been transcribed in an easy read format to make it more enjoyable and easier for you to quickly pick out what you need and start getting results. To get your ebook, head on over to corpwarrior.com, that's C-O-R-P warrior.com, and enter your email address. Then check your email for an email from me with a confirmation link. Once you click the link, you will be instantly redirected to a PDF version of the transcripts. This episode is brought to you by ARX, the most innovative, efficient, and effective all-in-one exercise machines I've ever seen. I was really impressed with my ARX workout. The intensity and adaptive resistance was unlike anything I've ever experienced. I love how the machine enables you to increase the negative load to fatigue target muscles more quickly, and I love how the workouts are effortlessly quantified. The software tracks maximum force output, rate of work, total amount of work done, and more in front of you on screen, allowing you to compete with your previous performance to give you and your clients real-time motivation. The ARX uses a computer-controlled motor to give you the exact amount of resistance your clients need 100% of the time. This means that the resistance can never become dangerous, is intuitive and simple to use, and can provide you with all the results you and your clients are looking for in a fraction of the time. ARX is highly effective and efficient in delivering all of the benefits of exercise, including increased strength, muscle mass, cardiovascular conditioning, bone mineral density, and injury recovery. As well as being utilized by many high-intensity training trainers to deliver highly effective and efficient workouts to their clients, ARX comes highly recommended by world-class trainers and brands, including Bulletproof, Tony Robbins, and Ben Greenfield Fitness. To find out more about ARX and how you can get $1,000 off software licensing when you place an order, that's right guys, $1,000 off, please go to arxfit.com and mention Corporate Warrior in the How Did You Hear About Us field. So again, to get $1,000 off software licensing when you order, head on over to arxfit.com and enter Corporate Warrior in the How Did You Hear About Us field. This episode is brought to you by the Resistance Exercise Conference, the science and application of strength training for health and human performance. Would you like to learn from the top strength training researchers, network and connect with other exercise professionals from all over the world, join a welcome reception on a Friday night to build relationships with other strength training professionals, experience an early morning workout from an expert trainer to kickstart your Saturday, and get inspired, rejuvenated, and focused on your strength training business? I certainly do, and that is why I am attending and interviewing all of the speakers at the event. The Resistance Exercise Conference will be held on the 9th and 10th of March 2018 in Minneapolis, Minnesota at the Commons Hotel. The early bird registration fee is $149. To get 10% off this already generous price, head on over to resistanceexerciseconference.com. Click the registration button and enter Corporate Warrior 10 in the promo code field in PayPal. I'm very excited about this and I've wanted to attend for years. Sign up now at resistanceexerciseconference.com and get 10% off with promo code Corporate Warrior 10, and I look forward to meeting you in person.